Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofrumento, and I know I'm excited about every single episode, but today's guest has me all sorts of fired up, even before we hit record here today, because her work is deeply impactful, deeply meaningful, and for me personally, it really strikes a chord. So I want to tell you about her, and then also tell you about her work. So today's guest, her name is Nicole Clark. She first logged onto MySpace all the way back in 2004 during her freshman year of high school, and from there she found herself in a long career in social media, creating and executing social media strategies for both B2B and B2C audiences. Social media shifted for Nicole personally when she noticed the gap between what she wanted to truly save versus what she was willing to share on social media. That's what led to her to start working on her own company, an app called String, which is a structure for how to document your life. For me personally, as someone who's not necessarily the most active on social media, I do have that love-hate relationship with social because I want to cherish things. I want to save them for my own memory so I can scroll back. It's something that I do with my Instagram, with my Facebook, because I love seeing what I was doing, what I was thinking, what I was feeling at different moments in time, but it doesn't always feel like the right place to share it. So Nicole is on a mission to give us that place to save all of life's memories, the big things, the small things, the funny things, and everything in between. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview today with Nicole Clark. All right, Nicole, I am so very excited that you're here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Brian. I'm so excited to be here.
Heck yeah, and you and I obviously both know, but we started getting into the good stuff even before we hit record. So now that we're here on air, give listeners your background. Obviously, there's so much that goes into, and it sounds like it's been a building feeling of, hey, this needs to change in the world. Walk us through how you got here.
Yeah. So, like you said, I started on social media back in 2004 before anyone really knew what the world of social media was going to be. And, after college, I started at, Kiwanis International, international nonprofit. And as the token millennial there, I kind of put a bunch of social media platforms in front of me. I believe it was 7 to be exact. And they kind of said, figure this out. And from there, with Key Club International was their high school brand for high school students doing community service. And I was doing their Twitter for them, and it was so much fun. And I really got to connect with students and learn so much about kind of this idea of using customer empathy in my social media strategy. And from, I was working on social media for them for several years, and then left that world and joined a local agency and ended up doing some social media for brands. Again, using that customer empathy. And during all this time, I had, fell in love with someone in the tech world and kind of introduced me to that whole other side of things. And I also became a stepmom during that time. And at the time, Gloria was only 4 years old, and her mom, rightfully so, asked me to turn all of my social media accounts private. What I didn't realize at that time was how different the experience was going to be on social media by turning it private. So that was kind of the first aha moment that got my gears turning. And then during the pandemic, what we are all living and experiencing at that time, there was so much that we didn't want to turn around and put on social media. And if we want to remember all that stuff, how do we look back on it? And then from there, I started working on String, and here I am 3 years later. Earlier, you kind of gestured an uphill motion, and I feel like that's what this journey has been. It's like slow momentum, trying to make it up that hill, and feels like we're making bigger swings now. And it's just really cool. Like we were talking earlier before the interview started about when we talk to certain people and they have this love-hate relationship with social media, it allows them to connect to other people, but that save element. We aren't telling the whole story when we post often, and where does that whole story go?
Yeah, gosh, Nicole, I love that overview for so many reasons. There's so many different places that we could dive in from here. But I'll tell you what really catches my eye is when you said in your first job, 7 social media platforms landed on your desk. And I'm thinking back, you and I are of the same generation. And I'm thinking back to all the different social media platforms that I've personally used. I mean, we went through... Gosh, yeah, think about from MySpace forward to Facebook to Snapchat to Instagram to Reels and all these crazy Threads is out there now. I've not even dipped my toes into that and I don't think I'm going to. But all of these things, and Nicole, I'm not going to lie to you. I know that my user behavior has changed across all of them. Facebook used to be the place where I essentially journaled. Hey, here's what I'm thinking this month. Here's a lesson that I learned. Then I transitioned that type of stuff to Instagram and found myself limited to 2,000 characters. And anyone who listens to the show knows that I can't be limited to 2,000 characters. So I ran into all these things, Nicole. And for me, what I realized is I've lost my platform to share my voice with even myself, my future self. I love looking back to things that I was saying in 2015. I don't remember what it was like in the build up to me moving to LA and making those big changes in my life. And looking back at what I was writing on social is my way of tapping into that time period of my life. But why is it that you think that we've strayed away from that? Because obviously engagement on Facebook is way down. People are posting even on Instagram way less. My Instagram timeline is just all pages now. It's not even my friends at this point. What are those more macro level changes? And then bringing it to the micro, why have we as individuals, why have we stopped doing it? Whereas we used to on Facebook in college, I would say, does anyone want to play video games right now? Like we just stopped doing that. Tell us why.
Yeah. So I feel like what I'm going to say isn't going to be surprising to anyone. I think the first change happened in 2016 when as a country, as a world, things became more divided and people had opinion. Like social media is where you shared your opinions. And then suddenly in 2016, those opinions, people had thoughts on them. And so it kind of created this tension. And, I think that's when everyone started to move away from Facebook because everyone was just sharing news and all that stuff. And it's like, yeah, where can I continue to ask my friends if they want to play video games? Where was that happening? So a lot of people moved over to Instagram and people were thriving there. But then we started off with regular influencers who just wore, cute clothes or shared cooking recipes or dance videos and all this stuff. But then that slowly turned into more content creators. And then suddenly what was it? The biggest shift I will say is started in 21. In the summer of 21, the CEO of Instagram said, we are going to be moving to a video platform. And then in the summer of 22, they took action on that. And suddenly your feed was no longer just your friends' cute baby photos or friends from college and all that stuff. It was seeing a baby picture. And then the next thing that came up on your feed is someone doing a dance video with thousands of views. And then it kind of became this weird, what do I want to say, a juxtaposition. I don't think I'm saying that right, but the memories that you wanted to capture along these highly curated, highly produced videos and made to go viral. All that stuff made people start to feel weird. And then we moved from Instagram further into Instagram stories. And it's like, okay, this is a sacred place where we can share the little moments throughout the day, the little blips in our life. But then that started to not work either. Everything was so heavily pushed toward content creation that it leaves a lot of people saying, but what if I don't want to create content? What if I just want to capture what's already there? Yeah.
Yeah, Nicole, I'll tell you what, you have a really fascinating grasp on the social media landscape because as soon as you started talking about 2016, in my head, I was like, what happened in 2016? Is that when the platform got bought out? And then you're right. When you started talking about the I asked you to do this. I said the more macro climate, and you went straight there. You talked about, political landscapes changed. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even think about the trickle down effect on social media there, but you're right. That's when we started seeing, 2016, I started thinking about Facebook, and you're right. It was when I stopped using Facebook because everybody was arguing. And I was like, this isn't what I use social for. So then you're right. I love hearing the way you talk about Instagram is no longer a social media platform. It's a content creation platform. And for me, it's just a normal user, not an influencer. I don't want to play that game, Nicole. So I've stopped playing it. And so, yeah, for me, it feels, I really want to talk about String because hearing your perspectives on the more macro environment, I want the founder's story about what is behind String. What is String?
Yeah. So, like you said, it's structure for how to document your life. There are a few things that, like we've already talked about, that got me to where I am today with it. But one of that biggest shifts, like I said, was when I became a step parent. And it's just, being a step parent is interesting. And my heart goes out to all my fellow step parents out there. But there's so much that you just have to internalize, and you second guess about yourself, and your identity kind of gets blurred because as a stepmom, I want to feel confident in my choices as a parent. But then it's like all these other elements are at play, and I can feel kind of voiceless at times. And I have an incredible husband, and we have a good relationship with my daughter's mom and her stepdad. But it's like, where is my my parent journey at? And on social media, we have so many mutual friends between the families that it feels weird to be like, here was my parent win for the day, or this is what it was like to be a parent. And it just has always felt like not my story to tell. So I wanted created a place to put all of that. So String is essentially made up of one main timeline and smaller timelines called collections. And everything defaults to private to just you. And from there, the timelines are searchable, private, and shareable. So one of the things we've talked about on social media, if you've had social media for 20 years, for 10 years, for 5 years, if you want to find old posts, that's so hard to do. I'm sure all the listeners here are so familiar with that endless scroll when you're trying to find something from 2016 even. And so to find all that can be so tricky. So String makes that easy. Again, everything date based. So you could search, what was I doing in June of 2016? And then it would put you right there on your timeline. And then, the smaller collections, I could have a collection of my daughter, have a collection of everything of String that I've done so far on this project. We are currently in our pre-seed round. We have no money right now, or we're currently in the middle of our raise. And so we haven't built our MVP. As we look to do that and everything, where does all that live? Where does my founder journey go? And so I could have a collection that shows all that. Another collection for all the vacations I've went on, each friend I have, and just where all does that live right now? And it's scattered across all the different platforms like you've talked about. It's scattered in our photo app. I don't know how Google phones work, but if you have an iPhone, I highly recommend just take a glance at your photos, and at the bottom, it'll say how many photos you have on your phone. Me personally, I think a few weeks ago, I crossed the 100,000 photo mark. Now, part of that is I do the Instagram for my local farmers market. So I'm taking probably 200 pictures of dogs and food every Saturday. And I never delete those from my phone. But it's like I have all these moments in my phone and no good place to put them. It doesn't work just to put them on traditional storage like Dropbox. There's no context that you can add in there, no narrative. And then, like we already talked about, there's a million reasons why so many moments aren't fitting on social media right now.
Yeah, Nicole, so much. It actually feels, gosh, you used the word juxtaposition already in today's session, didn't you? I love that word because it almost feels like, it feels dichotomous for us, what I'm about to ask you, because it's interesting that here we are on the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast, a podcast that literally talks about growing your business, focusing on personal development to build yourself as an entrepreneur. And Nicole, so much in entrepreneurial terms, we talk about using social media to get your business out there, which makes sense. But we always forget about that dilemma that every founder faces. I personally face this. It's the first time I'm talking about it here on the air, but for me, it's like, obviously, I want this show. I want to promote this show. I love the work that we do on this show. We're very fortunate to be one of the top business podcasts in the world. But if you go to my social media, I don't talk about it because my social media, it's my social media. Like I want it to represent me, and I'm more than just the podcast. I'm more than just my businesses and my work. And so it is that weird juxtaposition of this is something I should be using for work, but it's also something I kind of just want to use for personal. And then on the flip side of that, talking about your business as a business, it is exactly that as well, where it's like, what is that gap that it fills? Obviously, we're talking about this on the personal level, but then when we tie it to business and you're in your pre-seed launch and round, which I absolutely love that for you. And I'm so excited to see the impact that String's going to make in the future. But when you are talking to people in boardrooms, in business settings, how is it that you position String? What is the value add societally? Because I'm sure that's what you're focusing on in a world that is optimized for views and playback rate and all that other stuff.
Well, if there is any investor out there that wants to have a conversation like this is absolutely incredible. What has happened when we're in, mostly what we've done is pitching or like doing pitch competitions or one-on-one conversations. And what we're running into is when we're having to say like our business model and like our TAM, SAM, SUM and all that kind of stuff, there's kind of like, they're not listening to the narrative because I'm trying to do a one-size-fits-all overview. And then at the end, there's like, what's the difference between this and Google Photos? And it's like, a million things are going in my head when someone asks that. But yet when I'm talking to someone one-on-one like this, it's like, yes, absolutely. I understand. So, everything that we've been doing with String is so much about choosing the right language. And as you can tell what I just said, we're still working on perfecting that because in those boardrooms right now, like it's hard to hear innovation at times, and that's probably one of the biggest takeaways that we've learned is when we're talking to customers are saying, yeah, this is a real problem for me. Why doesn't a solution exist? But this seems like a great solution. And so that gives us more momentum. And then when, investors are like, oh, I don't know, this seems weird. And it's like, it can be scary to hear about innovation. If you are understanding something immediately, it might not be that innovative. We're really flipping the script on things. Instead of social media, a world that's been share first, we're creating a world that's save first. And, when you're talking to maybe as investors being more an extroverted type, maybe their whole world is sharing, like what more can I push out to people? So people to provide education and thought leadership and all that stuff without thinking about all the stuff that's left on the table that you actually want to save.
Yeah, Nicole, that one thing that you said in there about sharing versus saving, that line right there, I feel like for me, even as an extrovert, it really strikes a chord because that's the gap that's in my life. It's never been easier before. Let's accept that fact. It's never been easier before to share. We can post to 18 different social media platforms. Heck, I'm going to use TikTok as an example. Somehow we've talked about social all this amount and we haven't even mentioned TikTok, but TikTok, we started, so we now have a TikTok account for this podcast. And Laura, who's on our team, she's amazing at what she does. She's just experimenting. It's not something that we're actively pushing. We have no audience on there. Literally, we start with 0 followers. Even my personal account wasn't following it. And Laura shares our videos there and it gets hundreds of views. It's never been easier to do that. And that's why when you talk about the difference of you talking to consumers versus you talking to investors, again, I go back to, it's kind of like us throwing shade on Instagram. It's just like, it's different games. Because the game that I'm hearing you talk about when you talk about conversations with investors is investors are looking to maximize ROI, looking to maximize shares, looking to maximize all that stuff. Whereas they might not understand that consumers, we don't want to play that game anymore. Talk to us about that delicate balance. Because in my opinion, and I have this, we always ask guests, what is your zone of genius? And you didn't even hesitate. It's your innate ability to deeply connect with customers. Talk to us about that disconnect, because the beauty of your business, the beauty of String is that I think this is a uniquely customer-driven movement, whereas other businesses that we see grow fast are investor-driven. They're rammed down our throat from sheer marketing budget and PR ability. Talk to us about the customer side of this.
Yeah, I love that comparison you just made. And I also love that you said, not a big following, but then you post a video and you have hundreds to thousands of shares. Can we just talk about how terrifying that is for a second? Like, anything you post on social media basically ends up turning into a PR post that is viral. And great if that's what you're like hoping to do when you post something. But, when you're in the early stages and you're like figuring things out and you're like, I know I should give an update, but what if it does become viral? And there are so many people that have had their lives ruined by going viral when that wasn't ever something they ever intended to do. So I think that's so interesting. And then, this shift between sharing to saving. When we talk about String is a private experience and you can have a completely robust experience without ever sharing anything to anyone. Yeah, investors are like, how is this going to scale if you aren't sharing and having that ripple effect? But the truth is we just have no place to save. And when people are like, what about this competitor and this competitor? What I really love is what I call, I know she's of all topic right now, but my Taylor Swift theory. Or the Taylor Swift test. It used to be the Kardashian test and years ago, but that's how time has evolved. But what the Taylor Swift test is like, simply, would this be beneficial to Taylor Swift? Because if for celebrities of that level, if the best they have to get is TikTok and Instagram, like that isn't going to cut it. And social's just dead in the water for them. And so when I take do that Taylor Swift test for String, it's like Taylor could have balance of collections of things she wanted to share with her fans. So she could have a collection of the whole Eras tour. She could have collections for every album she's ever written and behind the scenes stuff for all of that. She could talk about capture all the Easter eggs she's ever put out in any of her songs or albums. And then in that same platform, it gives her a place to save everything that's private. Her relationships, early songwriting before she's released that yet. Every single picture of her cats, because I'm sure there are a lot and they're super adorable, but where all do those photos go? So that's kind of the test I put from us against other platforms, because even though we have that private experience, it's having that first as that foundation so that people have the choice to share if and when they want to. And so it's very customizable. And I just feel like it really gives you control of your own narrative. Again, you aren't being so performative like, oh, well, it's Tuesday. Now I need to go post something on TikTok because the world says I have to. And it's just so interesting working on a social media platform. And it's like, oh, I need to like put something out there that String exists. But it feels weird that the place to put it out there are on Instagram, on TikTok, on LinkedIn. And it feels like spreading yourself so thin. I have to curate all these audiences and everything's so singular. But String brings everything back to just one place. And I feel like kind of the pandemic switched everyone from visiting the internet to living on the internet. And now that we're so consumed with living on the internet, we need a place to call home. And I see places like Instagram and that being the playground. You can go there, you can play all day long, hang out with all your friends. But where do you go at the end of the day? Where can you see everything? So I see String as like a hub of everything where you can look back on your life and see all your different eras, all the everything.
Yeah, Nicole, I'm going to call out one word in particular that you just used because I know how intentional you are with your language. And I think it's one word that I'm like, that right there, that you just hit the nail on the head of the game that I'm not willing to play on social media. And you use the word performative. Yes. That's the one place I feel like a fish out of water, Nicole, when I'm on Instagram is everyone, I just said it to one of my friends yesterday when we were playing tennis, is I was like, everyone shares these picture perfect pictures and captions even on Instagram. And I was like, I'm just me. Like sometimes it's my cheesiest innermost thoughts from like when I go on a bike ride, for example. I love biking near the water. And when I go on a bike ride, Nicole, I think about all these things, good, bad, ugly, things I'm worried about, things I'm excited about, everything. And I just want a place to share it. And it certainly doesn't fit in this performative theater where everyone is putting their Instagram selves forward. And so that's why I've receded from that playground, as you call it. I'm just not willing to play there anymore. So I love that perspective that you shared with us. Nicole, I know that we're going to go over time today, and listeners are going to be very pleased about that because I don't want to let you go just yet. I want to switch gears a little bit. But before we get there, I can't believe we've talked this long and I haven't asked you. Tell us about the name String.
Yes. Okay. So this is very crucial because there are some elements in here of how it came to be. So, as you know, with any startup, picking a name is everything, especially for a consumer app. So again, with that language, wanted to make sure that it was something neutral, nothing too tied to memories or too feminine, because everyone can find use out of String. So it's a very delicate balance. And so my husband and I, oh my gosh, I still have the papers where we're just writing out hundreds of words in different categories, seeing what sticks, seeing what was available. And man, that went on forever. And my mom is one of the most competitive women you will ever meet. And so I threw it out to her. So I have like a few emails from her, like pitching me on different words and why they would work. I think she had puzzle as something to do with puzzles. And then she threw out the word string, the normal spelling of it. And I was like, okay, I really, really love this idea. But I was like, it doesn't seem quite perfect yet. And then I don't know if it's the same day or a few days later, I went out to lunch with one of my friends from the agency world, Caitlin, and we're sitting over Greek's Pizza, which is my favorite local pizza here in Indiana. I highly recommend trying it. But we were sitting over pizza and she's like, oh, what if you doubled a letter? And we were like thinking about doubling the G, and that just didn't look or seem interesting or whatever. And so we kind of tabled that. And I went home and told my husband that we were thinking about that. And he's like, what if you doubled the I? And it was like a light bulb that went off. And so what I loved about this, and before we were like figuring out the rest of the language of what the possibilities were, everyone I knew, I was like, all right, I'm working on something called String, and there are two I's because it's about you and it's self-reflective. And then lastly, string, like tie a string around your finger so you can remember it all. So all of that stuff just kind of worked so beautifully. And then as things have went on and we've kind of realized how string ties your whole life together, and there are all these different parts around, and it just worked better and better and better. And man, at the beginning of the conversation, we talked about threads and that coming out. The morning when that was released, my mom like sent me a long text. She's like, did you hear about threads, the audacity of them? And she was like so worried. I was like, luckily that's been a conversation that's always happened, and wasn't too worried about that name, and String just sets itself up so well. I don't know if you've seen the picture from what's it called? It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where Charlie Day when him and Mac are working as like mail clerks in a big corporation, and Charlie has this big theory about what's going on, and behind him are all these pictures and this red string connecting everything. Now that is a little chaos, but I feel like that's what string can do. It can really highlight your life and show you all these commonalities that you didn't know were there, or you maybe just forgot about. And with string, our goal is for you to have the chance to remember it all.
Nicole, 696 episodes of this show, and this was the first reference to It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which makes me a very happy man today. So I love the fact that you just brought that up. And yeah, I'll be honest with you, for me, it's funny we went this long in the session of even me asking you about the name, because to me it seemed like just a perfect fit, a natural match, because you're right, there is just something about the concept, the analogies that comes with string. For me personally, those bike rides that I just told you about, I always think of those as thought threads. I come home and I'm like, okay, what thought threads came up through all of that? Yeah. Threads obviously coming back to string. So yeah, and then the double I, the self-reflective portion of it and the languaging that you use there, my goodness, that is a match made in heaven. I love that perspective, Nicole, and that backstory that you shared with us. I want to transition just a little bit as we come towards the end of this episode. I'm going to be sad when this episode ends, and I know that listeners are going to be, but I do want to talk about your own founder's journey, because I'm fascinated by that aspect of it, because especially hearing you talk here today, Nicole, you're picturing string being, we talk about a lot of B2B businesses, but this is truly a business to consumer, B2C business, where you will change the societal use of the way that we share or save our lives, save our memories, share it with people who are intimately close with us, our closest family members. I see that in my own family group chat, for example. My sister's in vet school right now. She's finishing her clinical year. My brother has 5-year-old twins, my niece and nephew. I'm always on the go, chasing sunsets and playing sports and all that good stuff. And in our family group chat, my parents have gotten into pickleball now. So all of us are sharing these things with each other in our family group chat, but they're gone. No one's going to scroll back into our family group chat. So I love how you are societally aiming to change this. With such a big goal in mind, though, my question to you, founder to founder, is what's that journey been like? I'm sure it's been trying at times. I'm sure you have high moments, low moments. Share some of those insights with us.
Absolutely. Yeah. What I have definitely found, what Halloween's coming up, and I think as for my Halloween costume, I can just be a B2C company, because what we have heard is that is one of the scariest things that you could possibly be. So it has been very interesting, especially here in Indianapolis. We have an incredible B2B scene. And so to come up and to be this random B2C founder, and then to have an incredible co-founder, Danielle Doherty, who is also a mom, and she doesn't have a tech background. And so it's like, who are these women and why are they ones to change this? But that customer empathy, and because we feel that disconnect. And so we have, it has been a lot of ups and downs. The ups very much when we talk to customers and they're like, yes, we need this. And the best in what you did right before the show started is you're like, here's the reason why I need string. And talk to someone at the farmer's market, another vendor at the farmer's market a few weeks ago. And she's like, yes, I need string because my grandpa died. And then my family, we are sharing all these pictures and all these memories via text, but I had no place to put them. With string, you can put all those memories exactly where they go. But getting that idea across to to investors has been very tricky, especially I mentioned TAM, SAM, SUM earlier. So TAM is your total addressable market of everyone that exists. Who would that, or how big is that market? And, as you're talking about, you're like, this could change everything, which so much pressure that I feel like in my core, but I know how important it is for that shift to happen in general. But yeah, with our TAM, so we're looking at everyone with a smartphone because everyone with a smartphone has this problem. And we can talk in another interview later on about, how I imagine that age range going for that. But so ours is a storage platform. So you get 5 gigabytes of space for free to get started and to for us to earn your trust and everything. And then from there, it's $5 a month for up to 300 gigs of space. So if you take that $5 a month, which would be $60 a year, times everyone who owns a smartphone, that TAM becomes I want to say $450 billion. And then if you look at how many more smartphones will enter the market in the next 3 years, or by 2028. And then if you take into account people expanding storage, suddenly our TAM might be $1.3 trillion by 2028, which sounds completely outrageous and I'm in way over my head. But when you think then about that customer need, the shift needs to happen. People want a place to put that stuff. So as we talk about my founder journey and all the highs and lows, would it ever be a choice to walk away from this? And unfortunately for me, the answer has been no, because then every day I have all these moments that I want to remember. Even just last night, my husband and I walked to our local restaurant that we absolutely love. We had an amazing dinner, and then walking back in the conversation and all that, where does that all go? And so wanting a place for that to continue to live is what gives me the fuel to keep going on String. And again, having such an incredible co-founder who is so detail oriented. And as I'm giving out all these brain dump from all the visions that I have in my head, and she has such a beautiful way of capturing that and making sure we're hitting deadlines and taking what I say and making sure that that's incorporated into the language that we use. And it's been such an incredible partnership right now. So many highs and lows in the founder journey. And such a funny music helps a lot. And if there is one song, if you're early on in your founder journey right now, if you can listen to the song The Climb by Miley Cyrus and not get choked up, more power to you. But between that song and The Man by Taylor Swift, when I really need amped up or need that motivation, I listen to that before any big pitches or anything like that. And then, The Climb, when I really think about the highs and the lows and just what it takes to keep moving forward and what the world could be like once this is done or once this exists. I know my daughter is all for it. And it's so funny because she's 12 years old. She's an amazing artist. She wants to be an illustrator and everything like her idol, Dana Terrace. And, but she also has a side move of really wanting to take my job. I know she is definitely looking for my CEO title one day.
Nicole, gosh, so much that I love in that story. And you're right. It's something that we can all relate to. I will say, when you said your second song is The Man, I thought you were going to say by Aloe Black, because that's my go-to song. I'm not a Swiftie, but yeah, that song gets me hyped up every single time. And you really had me thinking. I'm big for quotes. And so as you were talking about the just massive nature of what you're up to at String and what String's going to become one day, I can't help but think of that Steve Jobs quote where he said, the ones who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world are the ones who do. And Nicole, that's why, gosh, I'm getting goosebumps even just hearing you talk about all this work that you're up to and how important it is for society at large. We're not talking about social media. It's funny, listeners who tuned in today thinking this was going to be a conversation about social media, this was the first ever anti-social media episode, but I think it is so important for every entrepreneurial journey, for every human's journey, because I think that these are the important things. Life is about memories. It's not about things. It's not about all these other things. What you're really talking about is us enriching our lives, us looking back and saying, look at this collection. I didn't call it out earlier, but I'm going to call it out now. You know, a lot of people collect things in life. I'm anti things. I don't like having things in my life. So when you talk about collections, I'm like, that's what I want to collect. I want to collect memories. I want to collect moments. I want to collect thoughts and pictures and videos of people that I care about and moments in my life that define me. So, gosh, Nicole, yeah, you're hitting me in all the feels today. It's the fall feels for sure. But I also know that this is only the first time that we're going to follow your story and String's journey all along the way here on the podcast. I'm so excited for everything that's to come from you. But I want to give you this stage before we round out this session, because I feel like you just have so many interesting perspectives and you're so deep in this meaningful work that I'd love for you to share probably like your best piece of parting advice for entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs who are listening to this, saying, Nicole, you're on a big journey, and however big or small we view our own journeys, it's all intimidating. There's obstacles along the way in every journey. What's your best advice for listeners who are tuning in and feeling all the feels like I am after hearing you talk today?
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. Oh man, what is the best advice I can give? I think just something that we've been saying with String leading into stuff is time is one of our most valuable assets that we have in the world. And right now we don't have a good place to document how we spend that time. So I think just being very, aware of how you spend your time. It's okay if there are days where you just need to lay in bed all day and not get out. That is totally fine. We need those days sometimes to reset. But really think about how we capture everything that we do, because if you're just doing a brief overlook at your life, you think about, what has life done for me lately? You can really much live in that moment. If things go south, you feel like things are always gonna go south because you have no way to see that up and down journey that has happened your whole life. So I think being very aware of the time that you have and the time that you have with others, focus on the relationships that you know are worthwhile, or the friendships and all that stuff. And then there's that part. And then also, to encourage at least one person. Like, put that on your to-do list for today. It doesn't have to be done this week or even the next few months, but seek out people that you should encourage. Because I know in the very beginning, when I was leaving my agency job to pursue a B2C company again with no technical ability or anything, what I was doing was crazy. And so thankful that I have people in my life to say, you should do this. I know it's crazy, but you need to do this. And if there's anyone that you're seeing in your life that's teeter-tottering on that question, show up for them and just your encouragement. I don't mean you have to check in on them every single day or anything, but I know had those conversations not been had with me early on, I would have probably wiped my hands of this and just moved on with my life. Because it is scary to think about how things could change moving forward. If this really goes the way it should, the way I've built it to, things will be so vastly different. Just encourage others and encourage yourself.
Yes, amen to that. That is incredible advice, Nicole. Honestly, I know it's October here when this episode is airing, but you are truly hitting me in all the fall feels. This has been such an insightful episode, and I really mean it when I say that the entire Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur community, this is not the last that we see of String. And Nicole, I'm going to be the first to publicly make a demand and a request from you, and that is, I see on your website, you've got the handle in your mock-up of @Nicole. One day I want the handle @Brian. I want this to be the one platform that I own @Brian on.
Writing it down now.
Yes, I love it. All right, laid to claim. Listeners, you guys will never have access to that. That is reserved exclusively for me. But Nicole, on that point, I'd love for you to share with listeners where they should go from here to follow the awesome work that you're doing with your own entrepreneurial journey as well as with String. Drop those links on us.
Yeah, so I would love it if everyone just go to string.com, STRIING.com. And at the bottom of the page there, you can sign up for to join the early access list. So when we are ready with that first beta product, you can get in there and claim your name if you would like at that time. And unless if your name's Brian, then you can have like Brian 1 or something. But do that. If you want to connect with me, I'd probably say LinkedIn. You can find me there. Nicole, just type in Nicole Clark String and I'll pop right up. I would love to have more conversations like this. If you're interested in just the whole social media journey or anything, I'd love to have that conversation with you.
Yes, listeners, you all know the drill. Nicole, you got me laughing when you said, unless your name is Brian. I love that you're already sticking to this. Listeners, you all know the drill. You don't have to go far to find Nicole as well as the String website. Wherever it is that you're tuning in, scroll down below and we are linking to string.com as well as Nicole's personal LinkedIn because I say it in quite a few episodes these days, but so few people are brave enough to reach out to people who they hear on podcasts. I know this myself as a podcast host. I also know that the few of you who do reach out, I love interacting with you. So if you've enjoyed Nicole's company as much as I have today, add her on LinkedIn. Just reach out to her and say thank you or have a virtual coffee with her. You'd never believe what one connection can do in your entrepreneurial journey on both sides of the coin. So I'm already thinking about who I can introduce Nicole to and vice versa. There's so much room for collaboration here. So don't be shy, listeners. You will be one of the few who actually puts yourself out there. So you've seen how generous Nicole is. And Nicole, on that note, thank you so much for coming and joining us here today on the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Brian.